A never-before-seen surge in illegal immigration is happening right here in our own backyard. CBS 7's Gianni Windahl spent a week with Border Patrol agents to find out exactly what's happening when it comes to the people and drugs crossing into West Texas.
She tells us more on how it's impacting Midland, Odessa in this special report, Border Patrol Behind the Badge.
More than 1 million. That's how many undocumented people Border Patrol agents have encountered this fiscal year along the southwest border. And more than 32,000 of those encounters happened right here in the Big Bend sector.
The highest we've ever had in apprehensions in this sector prior to this year was 9,600 approximately. This year, we're up over 33,000 apprehensions this year.
Agents have encountered more than 34,000 undocumented people, compared to just over 7,000 in 2020, an over 380% increase. Some of those encounters happen here in the high desert mountains near Marfa, where Special Operations Supervisor Justin Milliken works as an expert tracker. Agent Milliken started working at the Marfa Border Patrol Station more than a decade ago.
When I first got here, it was groups of 4 to 6. Now there's groups of 10, 15, even 30 sometimes.
Transnational criminal organizations tell the migrants a lie. They sell them a lie. They take their money and they're told that it's going to be a very short walk.
Once undocumented people get into the United States, this is what they find. As you can see, it's no walk in the park. U.S. Border Patrol officials tell me that when they find some of these migrants, they're often dehydrated and don't have the proper clothing or gear to make it in an area like this.
The terrain where every plant and animal is designed to hurt, maim, or kill you.
A lot of them will walk so far they'll have blisters on the bottom of their feet. But typically they'll walk these draws.
That their lives are now depending on it, and so that's what the smugglers are counting on to keep them moving and keep them going. And when those people don't make it, they leave them behind, and that's just heartless.
Here in the Big Bend sector, 37 undocumented people have died, 726 have been rescued this year, compared to 12 deaths and 178 rescues in 2020. And agents say the deaths stick with them.
You work so hard to make sure that they're okay and you can get there in time, and I just feel bad for their family that I couldn't make it there in time, or the agents couldn't make it there in time.
Some of the smuggling happens here at the end of pavement on 170 in Candelaria. This land is usually dry.
There is a community of San Antonio del Bravo there, so it's a staging area, and they'll bring migrants through here quite often.
As the Rio Grande cuts through the hardened landscape of Presidio County.
Every day. Every day, every night, as soon as the sun goes down, they're coming in. Only because when the river is low flowing, it's easy to cross. The water doesn't go past your knees.
Supervisory Border Patrol agent of the Presidio station, Joshua Guerrero, says fewer people are crossing now because of the high water. But those that do take an even bigger gamble.
It's very dangerous to cross when the river's flowing so rapidly. It seems like they're just keeping us busy here in town with non-citizens coming in, and they're running their contraband more on the outskirts of town.
There's an increase in some drugs being smuggled across the southwest border, like cocaine. But it's the way they're getting here that's also cause for concern.
Smuggling of people, narcotics, contraband is being facilitated by people in the United States. The last year or so, that a lot of younger folks are being recruited.
Recruited on social media. And agents say some U.S. citizens are operating stash houses like this one.
We see box trucks full of people with no ventilation in the heat. We've seen tractor trailers, same thing.
Agents use surveillance technology, unmanned aircraft and drones to track undocumented people, then apprehend them at the easiest points. They're also out on foot, in the air,
there's a lot of people,
and on horseback.
We can get these horses in there and we can search places a lot easier.
They partner with local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies, sharing information and resources, and have ongoing meetings with authorities just on the other side of these mountains in Mexico. More than 34,000 undocumented people have made this trek and encountered Border Patrol. How many of those people were moved back to the country?
About 91% roughly of the individuals that we come in contact with are single adults. And as such, they're amenable to Title 42 in most instances. We return everybody that's amenable to Title 42 back to Mexico as quickly as we possibly can.
Around 30% of those removals happen in Presidio. The others are sent to sectors like Del Rio. As for COVID-19 testing,
we are not currently testing here because we're removing them to other locations where if it's necessary to be tested, they can be tested.
As the sun sets on the rugged landscape, it's the people and drugs that make it through that end up in Midland, Odessa. U.S. Customs and Border Protection officials won't comment on exactly how many undocumented people they expect to encounter before the fiscal year ends on September 30th. But they do say they work every day to complete their mission. In Far West Texas, Gianni, Windahl, CBS 7 News.
Gianni, thanks. It definitely is an unprecedented challenge for the sector, which, by the way, we're told isn't getting any help from National Guard members sent from other states. And agents on the ground aren't the only ones who have had to adapt.
We just never know who's in the group. So it's a mixed bag, and criminals know that just as well as anybody else. So they might just be people looking for work or MS-13 gang members.
It's a different ballgame in the air, where pilots have found smuggling trails, stash houses, and seen a new type of drug trafficking. That story continues tomorrow in Border Patrol Behind the Badge.
Big Bend and El Paso have never seen the large numbers that they're seeing now.
The Director of U.S. Customs and Border Protection Air and Marine Operations, El Paso Air Branch. His name is John Stonehouse. He's calling what happens at our border, quote, one heck of a challenge. The El Paso Air Branch is in charge of the Big Bend sector with a small airfield based in Alpine. There you see the area they patrol, the western portion of Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma. In total, almost 800 miles of border. CBS 7's Gianni Windahl flew with them and brings us this special report, Behind the Badge.
Because you're loud and clear, go ahead.
Yeah, Rick, just took off behind you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. There's definitely an increase in traffic, and it just moves around.
Pilots with Air and Marine Operations have a bird's eye view of what's happening down below on the ground here in West Texas. If you look out to the front of the window, you can see what the pilots actually see day in and day out.
Pretty much any of the sectors in the Big Bend, everybody's fairly busy.
This pilot, who we will not be naming for privacy concerns, has been flying with Air and Marine Operations since 2008.
That's right here the other day, in that little pass right there. I think there were 12.
Flying from Alpine down to the borderland of Presidio, the desert terrain turns to mountains. But that doesn't deter smugglers.
You'd probably get real annoyed with me, but I'd be talking the whole time about where people were apprehended, so it's anywhere along this entire stretch.
And both Big Bend and El Paso have never seen the large numbers that they're seeing now.
The director of the El Paso Air Branch, John Stonehouse, started working in federal aviation law enforcement in 2002 in Florida, then Arizona. Now he's in El Paso.
Smuggling activity, the exploitation of humans right now is extremely high. We have never seen a movement this much of personnel, of people, since I've been in part of the program.
More than 34,000 encounters with undocumented people in the Big Bend sector this year. The El Paso sector has seen more than 176,000 migrant encounters in 2021, mostly single adults.
A lot of the cartels work down here. They're pushing these folks down here in camouflage. They're not surrendering to the aircraft. They're not surrendering to Border Patrol agents. They are fleeing apprehension.
83, we're on the board for the record.
Our pilot has encountered some large groups.
We just never know who's in the group, so it's a mixed bag, and criminals know that just as well as anybody else. So they might just be people looking for work or MS-13 gang members.
Stationed thousands of feet high on top of mountains, criminal organizations have scouts, and the routes they use to transport migrants and drugs change.
Look at all that.
Oh, wow.
It's all trash. There's at least 1,000 to 1,500 backpacks. Yeah, it's like a little landfill, basically. Look at all that garbage.
The people's goal is usually to get to Highway 90 or continue north to Interstate 10. There's also been a change in the drugs that some are smuggling.
They're not just carrying marijuana. A lot of times they would core out the center of the marijuana, and they're moving fentanyl, methamphetamines, cocaine. They're doing what we call a mixed load. We've seen that trend about the last year. Fentanyl has really increased, smuggling up from Mexico. It's really bad. It's probably the worst thing we've seen in the history since I've been doing this.
On board several aircraft is Narcan. In 2021, AMO and non-CBP agencies found more than 250 pounds of fentanyl and 3 times as much cocaine compared to last year.
How do we say this? We have to effectively work as a team.
And from the air, pilots have found stash houses and loading areas.
You can see a few of them out in the distance, but once we fly over the top, you'll see them.
We're finding long arms with them. AK-47s seems to be their preferred weapon. It varies from group to group, but usually there is a long arm or a shotgun somewhere in that group. Because not only are they going to encounter the wildlife that we have out here, right, but it's also other cartels.
85% of the branch's flight hours go directly to border enforcement. The unit puts in around 8 flight hours a day, and 200 more hours have been added.
Congress did agree to provide us with 16 new of these A-Stars, which we appreciate very much. We have about 105 of them throughout the entire nation for Air Marine.
AMO patrols and tracks migrant groups through the air. Then Border Patrol agents will make apprehensions on the ground. They take agents to groups and help other agencies. They also operate unmanned aircraft.
Coordination with ground agents is key.
On board, pilots have food and water for migrants. They also make rescues, and in the most severe cases, migrants are actually flown out. Our pilot says one undocumented man spent days without food and water. He called them and climbed this mountain with a broken leg.
Anytime we log a rescue and we save a human life, that is the most significant thing I feel we can do every day.
Around the sheer drop-offs of Rocky Mountain sides in West Texas, and across all AMO operations, more than 370 rescues have been made this year, compared to 184 last year.
Hey, how do you copy?
I guess you're loud and clear, go ahead.
We understand everything that happens on the border does eventually affect the interior of the United States.
As the workday comes to a close, pilots continue to work towards their goal of tracking and rescuing people out here in the skies over far west Texas. In far west Texas, Gianni, Windahl, CBS 7 News.
Gianni, thanks. You just heard it from government officials and employees. The surge in border crossings and drug smuggling is having an impact.
But there's a group of West Texans who say they're impacted too, and they tell us they feel overlooked. It's the people who put food on our tables.
We're on high alert all the time. Well, how you doing? You know, you call. What's going on at your house today? Well, how many have you seen today? You know?
Yeah, you do. You check on people
Everybody,
a lot more.
Yeah.
4 ranchers in 2 different towns and counties are sharing their stories. Their properties have been damaged, and they've also been credited for helping save the lives of migrants. Border Patrol Behind the Badge continues tomorrow.
Live with studios in Midland and Odessa, you're watching CBS 7 First Alert News at 10.
Good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight at 10.
We're starting with the final part of our special report, Behind the Badge.
My daughter, when she's home alone, she has a gun with her in whatever room she's in.
West Texas ranchers are sharing their stories about how illegal immigration has impacted their livelihoods, family, and peace of mind. CBS 7's Gianni Windahl brings us more in Border Patrol Behind the Badge.
Tucked away in the mountains in the outskirts of Fort Davis and the wild expanse of Valentine sit several ranches. Several ranch owners tell me their property has been used by undocumented people, but they still provide them with food and water because they say it's the Christian thing to do. The Means Cattle Ranch in Valentine, Texas looks like a movie. Cows and horses roam, and the way of life for West Texas cowboys and cowgirls remains almost unchanged. But this land has become a busy roadway for undocumented people.
And we stopped him. What are you doing? He said, I'm looking for 505. Well, 505 is 8 miles that way. And what he was doing was picking somebody up.
Across the large cattle ranch are items that have been left behind.
Backpacks of drugs and clothes and trash and shoes and water bottles.
They say tracking devices have also been found in some of the drug bundles. And on another part of the ranch, this guest house was used by migrants.
They went in to shower and they didn't know how to get the water turned off. I mean, it ran for a long time because we don't go up there all the time unless we have guests.
Around $20,000 worth of damage. Shelley says the vehicle has been stolen, fences pulled apart, fires started, and their livelihood, Angus cattle, have been left thirsty after water tanks were drained by migrants. The same impact is felt miles away in Fort Davis, at the ranch of their lifelong friend Roxa Robinson, whose family has worked this land since 1905. Here, water tanks have been drained several times recently.
It was in a pasture where we had the cattle, so we had to hurry and get the water back to them.
It takes days to get the water systems online on ranches where it's hard to put a price tag on time.
It's all time. It's not time that we schedule. It's, you know, time that you fit in.
Every time you have a fire, I mean, that wipes out a whole day.
And just about a football field away from Roxa's house, a fire was started last winter.
Where they started the fire was right up there where that red spot is, down in the canyon.
It burned several acres of grass she uses to feed her cattle. Drugs have also been found.
In that ditch down there.
Roxa says the migrants she's encountered are different than the days of her childhood, when many people took advantage of a guest worker program.
They just want to charge that phone, and where is Houston, where's Dallas?
The brazenness of some migrants has Shelley concerned about the safety of her mother back in Valentine.
This is her front door, and this is where a group of them came in and they kicked her door in, and then luckily she wasn't at home.
If y'all want to come in here, there's a step down here.
Items were stolen, but it's an incident in February that left the family rattled. Around a dozen young men had been dropped off in the mountains. They ended up on Carmen's property and were given a meal before Border Patrol picked them up.
They threw a phone, all kinds of information. They had a map of my property.
It was pictures of her house, of her driveway, of a hiding spot.
One Christmas morning, Carmen walked in the living room and found a man.
He quickly said, "Tiene café?" And I said, I can't speak Spanish very good. And I said, "Oh, sí, un momento, un momente," or something like that.
Carmen made coffee and breakfast for the man and his friend. The two later went peacefully with Border Patrol agents. Carmen said she was told days later agents picked up 40 kilos of cocaine under a tree on her property, as well as several other migrants. These West Texans know their way around a firearm, but they don't want to have to use them. Besides the effect it would have mentally, they say they're worried about retaliation from the cartels.
It's not shoot and ask questions later, because we won't be around if we did that.
So a group of ranchers call each other every day to check in.
We're on high alert all the time. Well, how you doing? You know, you call. What's going on at your house today?
The ranchers say the U.S. Border Patrol and local law enforcement agencies have been a big help, but they feel ignored in Washington, which is why Shelley and Roxa started a website. So far, more than 1,000 people have signed a letter demanding change.
We need Washington to take us seriously and not think that we just are, I don't know what they think. They don't pay attention. The local families and ranchers and farmers that live on the southern border, it is not up to us to manage.
As the sun sets on this ranch and many more like it, the ranchers tell me they'll continue to be vigilant and call each other to check in. In Far West Texas, Gianni Windahl, CBS 7 News.
Gianni, thanks. Another interesting fact the ranchers tell us, it's a big deal when fences get cut, because if their cow gets out and someone hits it on the highway, they're liable for the damage, and that could tank their livelihood. What's happening hours away at the edge of America reverberates across West Texas, Border Patrol leaders say. Over the past few days, we've taken an unfiltered look at the number of people and drugs crossing into West Texas and the toll it's taken on resources and people alike. This First Alert Report series, Border Patrol Behind the Badge, is on our website. You can see it all on CBS7.com.